Hello and welcome to the Social Justice Forum. I am Daren Jaime, and of course, we thank you for joining us. For those of you that asked the question, what exactly the Social Justice Forums are all about, well, we provide a deeper understanding and go into deeper depth, if you will, with issues and inequities that communities of color face. And then we also get multiple points of view, trying to bring you more perspectives as we have topics that need discussion, and then we have guests that have answers. And we try to bring you both solutions and also talk about some of the problems right here on the Social Justice Forums. One of the big problems that's been plaguing New York City and particularly here, the borough of the Bronx, for a long period of time is the violence that's occurred over the summer. Many people are up in rage and in arms about the fact that young people are particularly losing their life to gun violence. A recent rally was held to talk about dealing with just that. It was a march to end gun violence. It was to save our sons and sisters. And our reporter, Arlene Makoko, was out there, and she brings us a story right now.
They're calling it Operation Save Our Sons and Sisters. Community leaders were gathered at 170th Street and Sheridan Avenue to denounce the recent shootings in the Concourse and Claremont Village communities.
Right here at this very intersection on July 5th, Anthony Robinson, a father, was shot dead walking his 7-year-old daughter down the street. We wanted to come right here because the 44th Precinct in Claremont and Concourse has seen far too many shootings in the last 30 days.
40-year resident Smiley O. Smith joined others here, agreeing that the shooting must stop.
So the gun violence has to stop one way or another.
So I'm here because gun violence is a part of our communities that we need to eradicate in its totality, and the only way to do that is to be a unified front.
Also calling for an end to gun violence was Eve Hendricks, the mother of college-bound 17-year-old basketball player from Monroe High School, Brandon Hendricks, who was fatally shot June 28th, just days after graduating. Police arrested 22-year-old Naheem Luke in connection to the shooting, but DA Darcel Clark shared that a return to safe streets requires the cooperation of everyone, including law enforcement.
We need the police to help us do this work. There are good cops out there. The bad ones, we got things for them. And I'm the first to tell you that. I will do that. But the good ones who are helping these communities, the people that care, the ones that are helping to apprehend these shooters, those are the ones that we need. And we need them to be able to do their work. So anything that's stopping them from being able to do their work is stopping our community from being safe.
Operation Save Our Sons and Sisters also looks to create safe environments for learning and sharing.
Operation SOS is going to not only start here at the 4-4, but we're going to travel all across the district because we want to talk to young people. We want to engage with them. We want to give them options, something better than they have been shown. We come together as people of faith, of clergy, community partners, anti-gun violence advocates, elected officials. We're all coming together because we know our children and families deserve better.
The speakers here are inviting the public to join them on a march against violence. It'll begin at Mott Playground at 5 o'clock on Thursday. For BronxNet, this is Arlene Makoko.
And thank you, Arlene. And right now we are pleased to be joined by Bronx District Attorney Darcel Clark, who joins us right here on the Social Justice Forums. And District Attorney Clark, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Darren.
Yeah, so as we look back at yesterday's event, or I should say yesterday's event, talk to us a little bit about the event and your thoughts. Do you feel like your voice was heard?
I absolutely feel like my voice was heard, but it's not about my voice. It's about everyone's voice. That was a tremendous showing of unity in our community, something that we really need because this violence is out of control. It's killing our sons, our sisters, as we talked about, SOS. It's killing our elders. It is just damaging our community. So I wanted to do something to let the community know that I know what's going on, that I care about it, I care about them, and that I love them, and that we need to stop the violence. And I think that the outpour of support by so many people yesterday showed that that message is being heard.
Yeah, it's a message that has to ring loud and clear. I mean, obviously, New York City has gone through its share of violence recently, but more particularly right here in the borough of the Bronx. It's kind of almost a little unprecedented, would you say, for yourself, seeing this kind of wave of violence the way that we're seeing it right now?
Yeah, I think, it's just so many things. I think that what really is highlighting it is the fact that we're coming out of this COVID. So we had
Right.
so much, death in another way, seeing that through public health and sickness. And we were all cooped up inside. And even being inside, like we knew the sickness was out there, but if you're home, you're safe, it was good. But now things are opening up, we're back out. And people have just decided to just settle scores that were festering while they were inside. People are uptight, they lost their jobs. Some people are still not well. Homelessness, evictions hanging over their heads. I mean, folks are uptight. And when things like that happen, problems happen and people try to solve their problems in different ways. And unfortunately, we have members of our community, not a lot, but enough that's causing this violence. They decided that that's how they're going to solve their problems.
I think, when we look at some of the cases that are actually before us and some of the things that we've seen, the images have been graphic and the images have been so painful. I think about Anthony Robinson, and he's walking with his little girl and he's murdered in broad daylight right in front of his daughter as well as in front of a community. I know you can't talk too much about cases, but talk to us about and let us know what you can and even how that has even affected you.
Well, I don't want to see that. That little girl now is going to grow up the rest of her life. That's the last time she saw her father shot dead in the street. She's running from bullets. No child of mine, yours, or ours should ever have to go through something like that. So I automatically thought of her and knew that it was just important that the community people got to get involved to stop this. We need to solve these kind of crimes. And what happens is that people do not cooperate. That's what makes it so difficult. In this case in particular, we were able to solve it. We have people under arrest. We have people charged with this, but this was a retaliation. This was a shooting a day or hours before Anthony Robinson. Then Anthony Robinson is shot while in a drive-by with a car with a number of individuals inside. And then hours later, 2 more people were shot and killed. One of them was in the car at the time that Anthony Robinson was shot. And so that double homicide happens a couple of hours later. And then yesterday, Anthony Robinson's brother was arrested for being a person that was involved in the double homicide in retaliation of his brother. So that's what we're seeing. If we had people cooperate and talk to us when the first shooting happens and we apprehend them and we hold them accountable, that should stop the violence. But what's happening here is nobody cooperates because they're going to take matters into their own hands, which means you have that shooting, then you have Anthony Robinson shot, then you have the 2 other men shot and killed. So it just perpetuates itself, and we have got to stop it.
Yeah. And another tragedy that we know right here in our community, 17-year-old Brandon Hendricks, who lost his life tragically. We here at Bronx that, of course, covered the services for Brandon Hendricks. And, of course, you also had the opportunity of calling his mother and allowing her to be able to speak at the rally. Just your thoughts about putting her up in front of the people.
She's amazing. She buried her son a week ago, and she has not stopped a day since. The day after that funeral, I was with her at a meeting in Jackson Houses where we're meeting with young men who wanted to have a conversation with the police about how they're being treated in the community and how the police are being treated by the community. And Ms. Hendricks was right there to set the tone, to let them know, we got to get past these differences. I'm somebody here who lost my son. You got to have these conversations. We got to move on because we got to work together to keep our community safe. She's amazing. My team is working extremely hard to make sure she gets all the services that she needs. And of course, we are working towards that final trial where we could get justice for Brandon and for his mother.
Yeah. You got a lot of work ahead of you, some cases, some real major cases that we, of course, know here that you're dealing with. And then the other stuff that we probably have no idea that you have to contend with on a day-to-day basis. But for an outsider looking in, and they look, and sometimes they make a sweeping generalization of the borough and say, listen, this is, these are a bunch of, people in the Bronx and they're all crazy. But what we're actually seeing, from what I understand, is predominantly a lot of gang activity, correct?
We have a lot of gang and crew activity. And it's unfortunate because these are young people that if we gave them something else to do, if we gave them more, if there were more resources in the community, they wouldn't resort to the crews and the gangs and the guns. They would just resort to each other to help lift up our community. And that's the message that we have to get out there, that we have to work with the Cure Violence groups who are right there with them. They have walked that walk. They have been there. They're credible messengers to stop them before they pick up that gun and retaliate, before they pick up the gun in the first place, to start the beef in the first place. We need to all work together, you know, in order to get that done. And it's just a message, you know, yesterday at the rally, we had a couple of the young people from the Cure Violence group speak. And one young man just couldn't even, he couldn't even pull himself together. I was standing right next to him. I could see him shaking with just the emotion, because he lost a friend of his 3 weeks ago to gun violence. These young people are seeing each other die. They shouldn't see that. They should be growing up together, getting married or being together, starting families, you know, starting their careers. And instead, they don't know if they're going to live from one day to the next. I don't want that for our young people. I don't want that for our community.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken at schools before, and I think one of the most troubling times for me was when I had the opportunity to speak at a school right there in South Bronx. And I asked, you know, the proverbial question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the young man said, I just want to make it to 21. And I think that that's horrible, that we have to think about our young people in that kind of context, given the fact of all that's going on and what they think, that possibly, you know, they may not be able to make it to 21. But look, we spent a lot of time talking about problems. Let's talk a little bit about solutions. And one of these things is about how do we improve the life of young people? Because when we talk about, you know, social justice here, I believe that a part of social justice is also creating opportunities and programs and exposure for young people to be able to make a positive decision, and also to be able to pivot them from the pitfalls that possibly can happen. So give us your thought, what you're seeing as a DA.
I'm trying to do everything to do crime prevention and to provide those opportunities. Working with the city, you know, they almost cut the summer youth employment program, but they brought it back, making sure we connect young people to those jobs, even though just for the summer and temporary. You do a lot of networking. There's a lot of socialization that happens there that's done in a positive way. I run a program called Saturday Night Lights, where before COVID, of course, then now there's so many things that close. But what that is that on Saturday nights we opened up 2 centers in our community, one in the South Bronx, one in the West Bronx, one for basketball, the other one for soccer and kickboxing and different, you know, activities for Saturday night, for them to be in a safe space where they can do some of those things. And we're also bringing, you know, college preparatory classes with them and all kind of job training for them to be able to do, you know, something else. I'm doing re-entry programs for those who may have gone away and returning back to the community, to make sure that they have a proper adjustment so they don't end up recycling and recidivating and going back into jail. So we want to do a lot of things. And the new thing that I want to bring about, and I'm working with a partnership with a doctor who works at Columbia University and through Lincoln Hospital, that we need to get more doctors involved in helping these young people with the trauma that they've experienced. People don't realize the trauma. Like that little girl now, we need to get her some help now. Because that goes untreated, she's going to be picking up a gun, or she's going to hate men, or all kinds of things can be going through her mind. We got to make sure that she's treated now. And I've been having these conversations while I've been out in the community lately, listening to the trauma that's in the voices of these young men. And I'm not talking about the teens now. I'm talking about the 20-something-year-olds, because those are the ones that we also have to worry about. They become forgotten at times. You know, everybody's thinking about the kids, and we got to do the kids. We always have to do the kids. And then the teens, you know, there's programs for them. But there's nothing for these young men, 21 to 29, in that area where they've grown past those 2 stages, and maybe they didn't get the resources they need. So now where they are, and all they know now is settle the score, pick up the gun, be in a crew, be in a gang. That's the life that they know. We need to give them options as well. When I spoke yesterday, you know, I talked about the cases that we know. Brandon Hendricks, you know, that was in the papers. Everybody know the 1-year-old child in Brooklyn. We had Tiana Johnson uptown celebrating graduating from Monroe College with her associate's degree, gunned down, at a barbecue celebrating her graduate. Those are the ones that we see in the paper all the time. But what about the ones that you don't know? The names we don't get to know? I care about them too. I care about the young men who are actually making these decisions on picking up the guns. I want them to know that I love them too, and I want them to live. So I want to do all I can to give them options, and they just need to know that they have a DA that I'm willing to do that, that I recognize that not all of them are gang members. Some of them just live in the community, and in order to survive, you got to know the gang members.
Yeah.
Okay? So that don't mean you in a gang, but you live in a community where you know that you got to survive, and you have to be friends with people that you grew up with. Some people go one way, others go another way. So I understand that it's not all of our young men that have gone that way, but even those who have, I still love them, and I want to do something for them.
Gun violence is major. And I mean, when we talk about young people who are engaging in gun violence, the thought of it in many ways is unheard of. But then yet and still the fact remains, a lot of young people are still picking up guns, and they're using them, and they're using them to the detriment of the community, and they're also taking people's lives. So let me ask the question from a DA perspective. Do we have any intel? Do we know where these guns are coming from? Because the average Bronxite is watching right now. People across New York City, they hear the gun violence, they say, okay, but they're coming into the community some kind of way. What are we learning about, these guns coming into the community, if anything that you can share?
Unfortunately, New York is part of the iron pipeline, is what they call it. And it comes from these states where you can get guns easily. People go down there, buy them, legally, bring them up here and sell them on the streets here. We've worked with the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, the DEA, different federal government agencies to help us in that work, because really, we have great laws in New York State. We have some of the strictest laws in the country. We do well, but we still have to find a way to stop the guns from coming into our community. So it's a dual battle, dealing with this, getting the guns from stopping to come in, and then dealing with the aftermath of what happens once the guns get in here. So we have to work with the community. Again, I've been pleading with the community. When something happens in your block, on your neighborhood, in your building, we all know who did it. They need to help us get to the bottom of this. If you know people who are selling guns in your community, we need to know that. Help us stop that. And that way the gun violence and the deaths will stop as well. So any way that we can get help from the community, we need it.
Yeah. A lot of people ask the question about the gun buyback program. Is that a good, reasonable option? I mean, we've heard it utilized before. Some people say it works wonders. Some people say it doesn't work. From your perspective, how do you see the gun buyback program?
I like gun buyback programs because every gun we get means somebody can't be shot with it. So any gun, 1 or 100, as long as we get that gun, that means a little kid can't pick it up for show and tell in a room where nobody knows and shoot each other. That means that somebody won't be able to commit suicide with it. That means that somebody won't be able to bring it out on the street because they think they need it for protection and they end up getting shot or they shoot someone. So I'm in favor of them. Some people say, oh, the real shooters are not the ones turning in the guns. But you know what? Family members can, mothers can, there's community guns. People keep them in a certain place. If you know where they are, turn them in. You get $200 or so for it, but you get more than that. We get better public safety in our community. That gun will now not be able to hurt someone.
Yeah, very, very, very important. Share a little bit about the work, because, many times, and for the years that I've been doing this, when I first got started covering district attorneys and the work that goes on, I always looked at it from a reactive point of view, that the district attorney has to deal with those people who come into the court system, dealing with those victims, dealing with that. But it was later on, after spending time as a journalist, that I found out that there's a lot of proactive work that goes on. And so I know that you're doing some work right now, and you're working with Chief Mattery and trying to do some stuff with community affairs. Talk a little bit about the proactive work that goes on in your office in trying to make sure that you don't see people have to come your way.
Well, prosecution, part of prosecution is prevention, and people don't realize that. So not only do I prosecute, but I try to prevent people from coming into the system in the first place. So we've done several things about looking differently at the cases that we charge, because it creates a problem, collateral damages to an individual if they're brought in to the system for low-level nonviolent crimes that we could work out in other ways. People have mental health problems. Let's hook them up with mental health resources so that they can address the real issue that's bringing them into the criminal justice system in the first place. People need jobs. People are homeless. People have drug problems. We connect with all of those kind of community-based organizations to get people the help that they need so they never have to enter the criminal justice system. Then there's working with NYPD. Look, and it's real controversial right now, working with the police. People want to defund the police and, all of these things. And we got to talk about police accountability, because that's real. That's truth to power, that we cannot have our police, over policing our communities or using excessive force. There's been reforms and changing the laws, making the disciplinary procedures more transparent, criminal prosecution more transparent. So we have ways to deal with that. But then we need the police to do their job. And people fail to realize that. When something happens, they don't like the police until they need one. And that's what I find is the situation with the DA's office as well as the police. So we, as two law enforcement agencies, have to work together to mend the relationship with the community so that the community can know we're not the enemies. We're here for your public safety. So Chief Madry, is great to have him as a partner. He, has 30 years of policing experience, policing some of the toughest neighborhoods in New York City, and he gets it. Just like me, I get it. I grew up in this borough my whole life. I grew up in public housing. I went to New York City public schools. When I walk these streets, I know what's going on because I am the community as well. And I want the community to know that. That's the relationship that we need to build. And over my last 4 years, I have been trying to do that. I beefed up my own community affairs bureau to send community engagement coordinators out there to deal with the clergy and the business people and the civic organizations and kids organization going into schools. We have to continue to do that so people will know the DA is not the enemy. The DA is here to make sure that you're safe and hold those accountable who bring the harm to the community.
Do you find that there's this misnomer in the community? I mean, when you start going out there and doing community advocacy and trying to create those bridges, because I think for a long time it's been that wall, and it's been that wall of separation. But I know that you do a great job of trying to tear down that wall, but you do recognize that there is a huge wall out there. And many of that is due to, preconceived notions and stereotypes.
No, it is. But I think that, when I go out there, I get a lot of love. I got to tell you, people say all kinds of bad things. It's like, I don't know where they're getting this from, because I feel the love when I go out in the community. And I'm not just going to the communities where it's safe or where they invite me. I'm going out there. When I did that march yesterday, we went in the middle of the street. We didn't go on the Grand Concourse or some big street. We went down College Avenue, right through the neighborhoods where I could just give you the statistics over the last 2 years. There have been homicides, shootings and shots fired, shot spotters. That's where you need to go. And when those people saw us, people came out and looked and listened. Little kids chanting, with us, save our streets, guns down, life up, that kind of thing. And also members in the age range where they may or may not have been criminal justice involved, seeing us there saying, look, I care for you. That's why I'm here in your community, not to lock you up, but to let you know that I care about you and you should join us so that we can make your neighborhood a better place.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the love that's given, because listen, a lot of times I see, and it's not always a welcome reception when a DA or that law enforcement official is out there in the community, but certainly you've been able to turn the tide here in the borough of the Bronx. A lot of love has been given and shared to you, and it makes a difference. I think it makes a difference in being able to connect. What advice do you give to community members, community-based organizations about bridging that gap? Because you seem to have gotten that down pat in terms of bridging the gap somewhat. What advice do you give to further bridge that gap? Because we got things when we're talking about, police community relations. We've got other bridges that we need to get to we need the gap to be filled in other areas. So what do you say to people about doing that and how to do that effectively?
I think that they should know is that we need their help, that we're all on the same page, that we have a common goal, and that's to make sure that our community is safe. They need to give us their ideas. You know what? I could come up with policies and ideas, but I don't live where they live. I want to meet them where they are so they can tell me, look, that kind of program is not going to work in this neighborhood. Let me tell you what will, or let me tell you what resources we need to be brought to our community to make this a better place. That's how you bridge the gap. That's how you become more effective. And that's how, when the police have to come in, because the community called them in because there's a problem. And I don't want to see violence against the cop. You know, last year, you know, it was a big thing. People were throwing water at police. That was outrageous. But look at what we got this summer. Okay? Right. So that's nothing compared to what we're dealing with now. And we have to make sure that we allow the police to go in and do the job that they have to do. And they have to understand that they have to go in and do the job that they need to do, but respect the community, and the community needs to respect them. There shouldn't be violence on either side, by the police to the community or the community to the police. We all need to be together for one goal, the safety of our community.
Yeah. Well, let me switch gears for a second and talk about the court system, because we know that's where you operate and that's where you function out of. And with COVID-19 happening, a lot of changes have happened, but there is this thought process that possibly the courts are actually shut down. Please give us and all of our viewers the rundown as to what is going on with court right now, because even though people think the court is closed, I know that's wrong. Court is still open.
The court has never closed. The court always stayed open. A lot of the functions had to be suspended because the governor issued the pause for the entire state. But look, people who were still committing crimes were being arrested. They were being prosecuted. My office has not stopped drafting complaints against people that are committing crimes, and you know, some very serious crimes during COVID as well. But that process was still going on. The courts made way. We did things virtually, just like we're doing now. Right. This has become the way of life. We can still do court work virtually. You don't have to have 3,000 people in the court building at one time to do the work of the court. So we've been working virtually, doing the arraignments. People, you know, if people were in jail, they're able to appear in the court by video. The work is getting done. We're disposing of cases, people that were in programs and were set to graduate or get out. You know, because of the pause, things were slowed down, but we're slowly but surely bringing them online virtually, letting them complete the things that they have to so they could go on and get their jobs and go to school and continue to do the work that they do. So the courts have been open. The courts have been open, never closed, because my people are working as hard as ever from home.
Yeah, it's been a change, but is there any concern on your part? Because we know before COVID even happened, there was this backlog in the court system. And so people are wondering now, post-COVID, are you anticipating a huge backlog, or are things going to be able to get back to pretty much what it was?
There's no anticipating about it. We have a huge backlog now. And one of the reasons why is that we haven't been able to bring the grand juries back or regular trial juries because the public is not healthy yet and the pause is still going on. So until we can bring that function of the court back, cases have just been piling up, you know, because it's not like people are not still getting arrested. They still have to be processed, but we still have all the cases that were pending pre-COVID and all the cases that have happened since then, but we have not been able to present them to grand juries because the grand jurors haven't been here. Now, the county clerk has sent out subpoenas summoning the grand jury to come back now. The court date is August 10th, that we believe we will be able to start grand jury work again, but it's up to the public to see how many people are going to respond to the subpoenas, because so many people are sick, taking care of school-aged children where they have no child care. You know, transportation is an issue because of COVID. A number of COVID-related things are going to have an impact on how many people we actually get in to become grand jurors again.
Yeah, you led into my next question talking about COVID, and give me a little bit about the trends that you're seeing, because COVID-19 has definitely brought some things out in people. And so when it comes for you, looking through your lens, how do you see some of these trends that have occurred in our community due to COVID?
Well, I know, unfortunately, in the Bronx, the testing is behind. We don't have the healthcare resources that we really need. We have poor communities here, and people are compromised already before COVID. But now, because we have high incidence of diabetes, hypertension, autoimmune disease in our community, people are not getting well, and it's unfortunate, and it causes trauma to them as well. This is a real public health crisis that we have to treat as a public health crisis, and we need to put enough resources in the communities that need it most. Okay, and again, the Bronx is always getting the short end of the stick. I always say I'm so tired of us being first in everything bad and last in everything good. They need to, we need to change that narrative, even in COVID, to make sure that we get the resources that we deserve and need in the Bronx.
You get the final word. What do you want Bronxites to know?
That I'm here for them, I love them, and that we're going to get through this. We're going to get through all of the violence. I pray each and every day that our community is going to see. We're having all these protests. Black lives do matter, but Black lives need to matter to us first and foremost. And that's what's in our community. So we need to care about each other first. We need to protest as hard about the violence that we see in our community as we are protesting about the police accountability issues. That's one issue, but we need to start right at home. We need to do all that we can to make our communities healthy and safe, and that they have a partner in the Bronx District Attorney.
Bronx District Attorney Darcel Clark, thank you so much for joining us here on the Bronx Social Justice Forums.
Thank you so much, Daren. It was a pleasure.
It's certainly, no, it's my pleasure as well. And so thank you, District Attorney Clark. Listen, we got to take a quick break, but coming up after this, we're going to introduce you to an original Freedom Rider here on the Social Justice Forum.